everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna talk about how to import food to another country. Before we go ahead, remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed the video, because this is gonna help us grow and consequently share more information with you all. So, moving forward with our topic, today we're gonna talk about how to import food to another country. In general, food importers are the one responsible for ensuring that the goods and the food that they import in that specific country complies with local regulation, with the hygiene standards, but also that they carry the right certificates, the health certificate for those products, and of course the country of origin for some of them. So there are different requirements when it comes to food because it's very localized. Like every country may have a ban, for example, for specific products, or require, let's say, a whole different set of documentation when it comes to diaries, for example. So we all understand that shipping food and importing food is not so easy, and that's why we have this video today. So to explain you how you can import food to other countries without missing any step. There's a lot to say and a lot to do, so please don't only take this video as guidelines, because it really depends on the product. For example, different products, different food products have different certificates and different requirements from country to country, but in general we can list some of them that are common everywhere, like the level of attention that you need to pay on those specific products is higher compared to any other. But overall, the first group to pay attention is meat, poultry and eggs. They are always very regulated, like you need to pay a lot of attention about that, and certificates and authorizations. It's a bit complex, we can say. And the second group is milk and milk beverages, dairies overall, but it's more like, yeah, milk. Then we have frozen food, like frozen confections. There are specific standards that you should comply with. And the fourth one is basically marine products, like seafood. So overall, what can you be asked for? You could be asked for a permission, like an authorization, other than the health certificate, the certificate of origin. So there are a few certificates and authorization that you may have, especially for those four groups. Again, marine products, meat, poultry and eggs, milk and milk beverages, but also frozen food. In general, other than those four groups, it may be that you don't have any requirement at all. Okay, any requirement at all is a little bit too much, but you may not have those very strict requirements. You just maybe need to present a certificate of origin, which is kind of easy to get. Overall, like for other groups or other categories, you may just need a certificate that you would have for any product, like, you know, tech products. You have maybe the safety mark that you need to apply for in different countries. So at the end of the day, you have some basic requirements that apply to all products in general, but for food products specifically, we said it's a little bit different and more complex. For example, in Canada, to export food there, you actually need to have, let's look at it together, a compliant food commodity, preventive food safety control measures in place, traceability procedures for your food, a valid CFIA export license or registration if applicable, and documentation of all relevant export information. So overall for Canada, for example, they not only want the health certificate or the hygiene standards, they want also the traceability, which means they want to be able to track from where it's coming, like the whole process of the, let's say, the food chain in this case, including inspections. Now, something very common is the license. So when you import food, you may need a license. And generally, how you can get a license, of course, you need to apply for a registration, but other than that, they're gonna check all the products, right? They're gonna inspect them, they're gonna check all the certificates that you have. So before you actually get the license, there's a whole process behind to verify that you can actually get this license. The products are safe and good to be exported to that country, basically. Then still specifically about Canada, because it's a good example of the steps, we have the preventive measure. So this preventive control plan, it's basically a way to ensure that the company that wants to export those products or import in Canada, it depends who's doing that, are basically putting in place all the possible measures to prevent any risk or hazard from those products. So it's literally a document like a document with all the steps and everything you do to ensure that those products are safe, there's no risk, and so on. And in Canada, for example, you're required to have this preventive plan before you can even import or export anything. So you should have the food label also with the same standards as the local regulations. So generally, you know, when you go to, I noticed that a lot, maybe because I'm in the industry, but when I came to Hong Kong, I noticed that the same products maybe have different labels, like the nutrients, like the food label behind the product is actually kind of different from what we have in Italy. And that's because Italy probably has a different let's say standard when it comes to food labels compared to Hong Kong or any other country. So sometimes it's very little, sometimes it's too much, and that really depends on the country. And that's why also the food labels is something that you should comply on, like exactly like how you're going to describe the content of such products. So let's say still on this preventive control plan, let's say that you are an exporter, so you're simply exporting products that someone else does, like someone else manufactures. And in this case, I have, I don't know, a jam, like a jar of marmalade, I don't know. So I want to export that to Canada, and what do I have to do? Like, I'm just an exporter, like I'm not manufacturing actually the product. Well, under this preventive control plan, you're supposed to verify and go still over this preventive control plan, not because you are manufacturing product, but because you're exporting someone else's product. So you need to ensure the exact same standards as if this company, like the manufacturer company, would have to do, which means that if the real company behind the product, like the marmalade, the jar of marmalade, the marmalade brand, doesn't export themselves in Canada to Canada, but you do it, then in that case, you are the one that has to write down and document the preventive control plan. You are the one responsible of ensuring that the labels are good. It's not them, it's not the manufacturer, you are the one exporting, so you are in charge. So even if you're not the one making the labels, you're not the one making the products, you're still responsible because you are the one exporting. So if you have a business license, like a license, an export license, for example, then you are the one who is supposed to check that whoever is exporting, you're exporting from, like whoever you're partnering with to export the products, actually has the registrations, the food labels, and blah blah blah. So you are the one responsible, even if you don't make the products. Okay, so be careful if you want to import someone else's products into a specific country. You are the one responsible, okay, because you're the one exporting or importing, and so you should know about food labeling, about licenses, about standards, hygiene standards, because you're going to be asked for it. And then there are inspections. So many countries, including Canada, they do have inspections, which means they sample check your products, or they require some documentation for a specific product or a category. So there are some fees associated to it, but they also expect you to inspect such a product continuously. So you could have their inspection and you should have your own inspection in-house. And here comes the fun, which is not really fun, but it's traceability. Like, another step is traceability. So traceability means they need to be able to trace back and forward what happened to the food. For example, who manufactured, who prepared the labels, when those raw materials were provided to the manufacturer or to you to manufacture such products, and also, for example, like who you got the product from, the date and all the details, but also who you gave the product to. So to the customer, date, all need to be traced back and forth, basically, to understand like raw materials, from where that's coming, date, and so on, who made the product, the food labeling, who did it, and then there's also like who you give it to, like any expiration date as well, and so on. And if applicable, there's also identifying, for example, when you actually slaughter the animal, basically, if we're talking about meat. So that can be very deep, like could be very complex to trace back. So manufacturing, exporting food at the same time could be difficult just for the requirements and for all the documentation that you need to keep, especially when it comes to traceability. And that also ensures that if something happens, you can trace it back. So if something happened, you know, when someone says, oh, a batch of products was recalled from the supermarket, from the stores, this specific product, if the lot number was between this number and this number, please just don't eat it or don't use it, and so on. So that's the purpose of this traceability, is to ensure that if something happens, something is found at a certain point of the production or the raw materials or whatever, we are still able to recall the products. And in general, like restaurants may import, right, some products, some food, and this traceability doesn't really concern them in general. Of course, it depends on the country, but in general, it's not really for restaurants and I don't know, bars. They don't really have the traceability requirement, but it's more like for who imports. And then we talk about lot accountability. So you should be able to actually figure out and you should know and keep documentation of which lot was certified by which certificates and so on, because this is going to help as well to recall products in case something happens. So in general, what you should keep in mind, like what you should have on hand in case something happens for a specific product. Let's say the list: the country of export, the certificates issue, description of the lots, product description like the size, the grade, the type, the scientific and common names of the food, the method of production, the name and registration, license number of all establishments from which the food was sourced and activities conducted, processing, packaging date, codes, product identification marks, net weights, total units and unit size of each lot in the consignment, the storage conditions of the product, consignee name and address, consignor name and address, the date of the consignment that was exported, the transportation information, the container and seal number. So, and overall, just to summarize, there are two types of requirements. There's the food specific requirements, which means if you're importing poultry, eggs or milk products, then you need to let's say meet certain requirements, so it's specifically to the food, type of food. And then there's foreign country or the country requirement, which is different. It's like labeling, what you should show on the label and stuff like that. So there are two types of things, like specific to the food type, and also in general when it comes to food, the country specific requirements. Then we are gonna see in the next video what are the labeling requirements in general. I always pick Canada as an example, but those are somehow the basics that you should understand, like the traceability, the lot accountability. Sometimes you need the prevention control plan in quite some countries. You need to know if you need a business license, who's responsible for the safety, health, hygiene and so on of the product. So this is pretty much overall what you need to know before shipping or importing certain food products to specific countries, so to certain countries. But there's a lot more to say, so we're gonna cover in another video the food labeling, like what you should know when it comes to food labeling, and how to mark those labels, what are the general information that you should always have, and so on. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment to the video if you enjoyed, so you can also receive updates on my next video and understand more about food labeling. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.